This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Hey everybody out there in the digital frontier, living on the cyber-physical boundary. Some call it the figital space, that space where the human condition meets technological capabilities. Welcome to the Digital Cowboy Roundup, where we explore that space together.
The ripple of innovation does not spread evenly in most companies. If you ask the employees of a company if their organization needs to be innovative, the answer will start decidedly yes with executives and product managers, and then quickly lose its luster and become, I guess so. If you ask those same employees if they have received formal training on innovation, again, the answer is concrete from executives and product management, and then slides off a cliff with not really or no. Pivotal tech leaders need to be strong advocates for innovation and be just as strong in practice. To discuss this in general and then some specifics, I'm joined by Christopher McCune, founder and CEO of 1233 Solutions, an expert coaching professionals in all disciplines how to be masters of innovation. I interviewed Christopher for my book, The Pivotal Tech Leader's Guide to the Untraveled Road, but this will be an opportunity for us to have a deeper conversation.
Thanks for joining me, Christopher.
Thanks for inviting me. It's always fun to talk shop, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, very much so. Would you mind giving the listeners a bit of your background?
Yeah, definitely. I've made a career out of developing innovative product solutions, or maybe at least unique product solutions, but involved from visioning all the way through commercialization. At this point in my career, I've come full circle, and I've spent the last over a decade teaching innovation. But alongside that, I've kept my hands on real projects. I still believe that if you can keep your hands in the trenches, you're still learning. I learn every time I talk to someone. So I really enjoy being out there working on real projects. Keeps me sharp, keeps me focused on what's going on in real life. It's easy to drift away from that. I'm always adding to my repertoire based on what goes on in real life. So during that time, just a little side note, I've come to the realization that it's those principles and your mindset and the application of your values that separate those successful solutions from those prickly projects that just seem to die a slow death and never really achieve their goals. I have extensive experience in improving creativity, vision, and strategy as a team member, participatory leader, and a coach. And of relevance to this conversation, in late 2024, I decided to start my own company, 1233 Solutions, so I could focus on helping others on their journeys. And so type of people and businesses that I work with, sometimes I've got those people with doing their first attempt at creating something new or solving a significant challenge, and they just really aren't sure what to do or how to proceed. I also deal with veteran innovators and companies that aren't seeing the success they once had or the success that they want, and they need some help identifying the gaps in their methods. And in all cases, the joy I get is seeing that aha moment when we find the piece that they've been missing and help them continue to grow.
Excellent. So Christopher, in a nutshell, what exactly is innovation and why is it important to tech leaders and their teams?
So good question. What's the one I always use? Oxford Dictionary says innovation is making changes to something that's established, especially if it's a new result. But, I've always taken the definition that innovation is creativity, but with a critical focus. So, yeah, of course, it covers all of the big picture items, those complicated projects where we're really trying to bring in something new. But even just a challenge at the office or at a meeting, that's also innovation. So those same creative tools that allow you to solve bigger problems can be used in every day. The main misconception I run into out there over the definition of innovation is that it's a black box, kind of reserved for those special few, the divine inspiration piece. But I believe and I'm convinced that it is a skill that can be learned. I've taught a lot of people how to innovate who felt they never could. For tech leaders, or any leader really, when faced with something new, it's important to develop a few core skills. And, this could be, you pointed out in your book, the OODA loop and things like that, but the ability to gather useful information quickly, the ability to organize and evaluate that information and make informed decisions, and of course, efficient implementation. But I think the key piece is making sure that you're iterating. There is no single pass for innovation. When you think you've got it solved, you need to go back and gather more information and prove that it has before you move on. Obviously, tools can help. Some of my favorites: Ansoff Matrix, the How Why Ladder, Value Proposition Canvas, or Journey Maps. Teams and team members will benefit from the same set of tools that any of the leaders will. But of course, they're going to need coaching and incremental training to succeed. I think that's a key job of any leader, is to make sure that they're pulling people up the ladder with them so that the next generation has a place to move to and keeps them engaged along the way. The key thing I think leaders need to remember about innovation in general is that every path is unique and it will not be identical to theirs. So leaders need to make sure that they're coaching and not force feeding a version of innovation that only works for them and may or may not work for someone that they're coaching and bringing up along the way.
That ties in really nicely to the principles I bring out in the book, where the untraveled road is everybody can travel it, but everybody's path is unique.
I think a lot of what you did was bring that content into a single location to help people figure out those interactions, right? The space between. How do these things all link up? And that's one of the things I like about your book.
And you bring up the next topic. That was a very good segue. So speaking of Ma's cookbook, I love the concept of Ma. And obviously, when I first saw it, I actually did think it was maybe not what you're going to say. But let's have you tell us, what exactly is Ma, and why the cookbook metaphor? Where did that come from?
So in order to explain that, I've got to run through a little bit of the history. Throughout my career, and as we were trying to set up 1233 Solutions, we were trying to focus on what are the challenges that we're really seeing. And there were two things that stood out. One is the tendency of a lot of businesses and individuals to look at innovation in a way that I would call fast food innovation, right? It's super quick, but it's not really got a lot of nutritional value. And I think everybody who's been in the business long enough knows that fast is only helpful if you don't have to loop back and fix problems. So fast food innovation is that analogy. It leads to minimal market impact and inflated forecasts, as well as longer projects, especially when value proposition discussion is pushed out, which is really common for teams that want to jump right in. They're all excited, but they forget to stop and think about, do we really have a customer for this? Are we creating any new value? And the second thing that we recognized was a lack of commitment to the journey. So this is more related to training and learning how to innovate over time. This is kind of one of those biggest challenges we've seen things over the years, is that leaders will prioritize their own training and growth, and they'll make sure that they get the training they need, but they often neglect to make sure that their teams are trained and growing along the way. So again, it's that same idea of pulling people up the ladder. I think that's super important. So all of that led to the cookbook that we wrote, Ma's Cookbook. And I'll get into the herbs and spices and ingredients and recipes that we use as analogies. But, trying to cleanly frame innovation is I found it somewhat akin to herding cats that are chasing birds and being chased by dogs, and the occasional raccoon that gets thrown into the middle of the picture. It's chaos. True innovation on the front end is not fun if you're not prepared to organize it. Every project's different, so those defined processes just don't seem to work on the front end. In addition, we found that the general lack of understanding of innovation causes leaders to assign their teams to what I'd call one and done training. the whole mantra of, well, they spent an hour in training, so they're done for the rest of their careers, right? No, they're not. It's a journey. So how do we describe that? Because when we're talking to innovation, again, most people see that as a black box. We analyzed it and associated it with a cooking analogy because it's something more relatable to most people. So most people start cooking at home by following either a set of recipes or being taught by a family member or friend. And as they learn the taste and the smell and the uses of specific ingredients, they add to that and they modify basic recipes to suit their palate and the situation. So what their preferences are. Those who continue to build on those core skills can eventually create recipes as they need them based on the challenges and ingredients at hand. And just like learning to cook, learning to innovate is a journey. Leaders need to be realistic about where they are and individual team members are along their paths. And if here's my best way to describe this. If your spice cabinet is still only contains salt and pepper, then maybe you shouldn't be applying for that master chef position. So someone could be on their journey, they're not there yet, then I would encourage them to find mentors and the tools that can help them grow their skills. So, find that path forward through help from others. And if you don't want to be that master chef, then find the best restaurant so you can find a good chef who can cook you a good meal. So you need to fill in with that expertise to keep that innovation going instead of trying to shortcut it. As a definition, recipes, that's for us kind of the process examples. They're intended as examples and kind of a minimum direction to get started. I'm not a huge fan of process early in the innovation. And so we include some basic principles that help you solve individual problems within that innovation process. But then we provide a whole bank of ingredients. So the main ingredients, those are the tools. So again, those Ansoff matrix, things like that allow teams to organize and achieve, especially a way to make ideas visible. And then the herbs and spices, that's the fine tuning, right? Those are those little tweaks that you make for every individual project to help you move forward. Without, there's always connections between all those bigger pieces.
Right. I love the approachability of this all, right? So the metaphor of cooking, like you said, even if you're not adept in the kitchen, you know a little bit about cooking, and you know whether you're just using salt and pepper or if you're using cumin and your paprika, and you kind of know where you're at, but you have that ability to get started immediately. You don't have, like you said, you're not a big fan of process. You don't have to go through 6 weeks of training in order to participate in the team.
Right. And it falls back to that, everybody can start with a microwave or even adding milk to a cereal bowl. But if you want to grow, you're going to have to take more than one shot at it and learn over time.
Yeah, exactly. So we've covered the cookbook. What about MA? What is MA? How does that fit in? My understanding from having talked to you is that this is a pretty critical thing.
It is critical. It's kind of the core methodology that we use. And I joke because we called it Ma's cookbook from pretty early on. And what I always get back is, it's like, oh, it's your mom's cookbook? No. Ma specifically is a Japanese
I did that
concept.
As well.
Yeah.
When you first introduced it to me,
that's always the comment. It's like, I thought it was going to be this. Well, no, yeah. It's not. So Ma is a Japanese concept describing that space between objects or elements or moments. They don't describe it as an emptiness. They look at it as a crucial element that kind of creates those relationships and meanings. And so Ma, as a metaphor for us, we look at that as, okay, by focusing at those connective tissues, we avoid, kind of those incongruous solutions that are frankly the same solutions that your competitors would probably find. And you and I had a conversation in the past about driving. So, I don't know, mountain biking, driving a car, motorcycle racing. I think anybody who's done that finds that if you look at something you want to avoid, you're going to hit it. And so I look at MA as the
Right.
same thing. You don't look at what you want to avoid. What you want to do is make all these data points that you have work together. And so you look at the points in between, and that's the MA, right? So that's
I've realized,
kind of how we look at innovation.
yeah, I've realized since having come into contact with you and your thinking that that concept of Ma plays not just innovation, but in the way teams work, and that space in between is becoming so critical to the way I think. I think I've told you before that I've literally thrown out all of my innovation. I've been doing innovation for 20 plus years. I've thrown it all out in favor of what you've come up with because, and this is the second time I've done this in my life. So kudos to you, but it's so important, I think, and this is something I want to talk to tech leaders out there about. It's so important to buy into something that you feel like you can make your own, even if it's, even if it's not, get started. And that's what I love about Ma's cookbook is it's so approachable. It's immediately accessible. It doesn't take a whole big process for you to get going, and you can lead teams very quickly. You don't have to wait for the corporate training team to teach everybody a process.
Yeah, thank you for the compliment. For those that aren't here, so Ma's cookbook is not published yet. It is something we use in the background that drives how we interact with the teams and the businesses that we work with. So we'll pull out these tools that we need it, and we tend to, through discussion and whiteboard drawings, and we don't tend to pull up any PowerPoints or anything. But there's a whole data set. So the recipes are there. They're just examples of how to combine things. But then those tools, those ingredients, they're kind of a smorgasbord of what's in the fridge today idea, right? So you don't have to wait, just as you commented, you don't have to wait to be trained necessarily. You just need to look at what's there, some of the recipes as examples, and then you can pull in the pieces that make sense for what you're trying to solve.
Exactly. Well, folks, we're going to continue our conversation with Chris, so don't go away. I did want to point out that you'll have his contact information in the podcast description, so feel free to reach out to him directly. One of the things I will say, having written the book, is I realize just how many experts are out there, and it's important for tech leaders as we start to bring in this broader set of aspects and facets, things that maybe we haven't developed before, that we need experts to help guide us on our journey. So feel free to reach out to Chris, and he can certainly help you with the innovation part of that.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
How exactly do we bring people together to solve a challenge? You did mention that they need a little bit of training, a little bit of get started juice, if you will. But your approach to innovation is very accessible and very approachable. So how do you, as a tech leader who kind of is familiar with what you're doing, how do I bring a team together to tackle a challenge?
Yeah, so if there's training involved, we recommend that you get somewhere between 8 and 10 ingredients as a starter point and 2 to 3 recipes kind of as a starting point. And people can be very successful with that. But when you bring a group of people together, 1, you've got different levels of ability, and 2, you're dealing with different personality types throughout the group. So kind of have to blend those. So the biggest issue is trying, when I'm doing facilitation, is to level set that group and try and get them, everybody gets to talk, those kind of things. So I tend to focus on trying to get them to do a little bit of working on their own, and we can get into more detail, but I think the core piece there is making sure that everybody in the room realizes that each one of them has a specific little bit of knowledge they may not even be aware of about the challenge we're trying to solve or how to solve it. And if they work together, they're going to be a lot stronger than if, somebody dominates the conversation. So, bringing it back to food, I always joke, everybody generally, I think, can make guacamole. But for instance, like my wife puts cumin in the guacamole, and I don't know if that's common everywhere, but I hadn't seen it before. And so that's just this little tweak that I think makes it a lot better. And you never know who's going to be in the room and what ingredient they might have that you haven't used before, and how that's going to help drive us, drive the group towards decisions.
Right. The perspective and experience of others is huge. I mean, I'm a big proponent of teaching teams the concepts around things like the wisdom of the crowd, and the fact that you can put domain experts, subject matter experts in a room, and if they work together with something like Ma's Cookbook and appropriate guidance, what they come up with is better than any one of those experts ever could have by themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest challenge that you're fighting within most innovation groups is you get everybody together and you talk about, here's the market situation and here's all the information that we have about what our competitors are doing and what we're doing today and what's working and what we think isn't working. And then, the one engineer in the room goes, oh yeah, okay, so here's the solution. Okay, well, wait a minute, it might be, but odds are it isn't. Odds are that there's gaps there, because you can't make a rounded whole solution with one input, right? The best of one decision is not a lot of choices.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and it's not, honestly, it's not just engineers. What I've seen a lot of is even with product managers and executives, they'll our brains work on patterns, and a lot of times people will have these patterns pre-built, and they'll come to a conversation or a collaboration, and they will, even if it's subconscious, they will drive that pattern forward, even if it doesn't fit, right? Because it's the one that's in their head, it's their perspective. And I think one of the important things here is that because your approach is so accessible and immediately applicable, you can get the entire team up to speed. With coaching, they can let go of those patterns and work together instead of, following a process, waiting for their opportunity to kind of manipulate or okay, we're at the point now, it's an engineering thing, so as an engineer, I'm going to drive the process now, or I'm a product manager, so it's time for me to make a decision. No, it's a collaboration between the experts in the room.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody has a pattern. They tend to move towards what they're comfortable with, what they've done in the past that's worked. And as a facilitator or a coach, when I walk in to help teams, I try to take that, I hate to say it this way, but their wind out of their sails a little bit, not to knock them down, but to make everybody somewhat equal. So I love to start conversations with, it's like we've gone through all the background information, and here's the point where we might start thinking about potential solutions to that problem. No one talk to each other. Everybody grabs a piece of paper. If it's a physical product, I want you to sketch out what you think the solution is, make your bullet points, whatever you want, or we might gather information through a post-up, sticky note kind of conversation where everybody puts their ideas or their questions up in a group so that we can analyze them together. But it takes away that one person domination, right? Because anytime you let people speak about what they think, and you need to get there eventually, but if you start there, then it's sequential. And whoever has the loudest, strongest voice.
Correct. Hippos in the room. Yep.
The hippo in the room, right? The highest paid person. They can dominate that conversation and take it over and steer the entire, it's like somebody grabbing the steering wheel of your car. You could just, they can take it off the road really easily.
Seen it so many times.
And so by getting the whole group to slowly build towards that discussion where they're making decisions, but you've already kind of flushed out everybody's individual ideas and laid them out for everyone to see, it's a lot more productive. And it tends to, even those people that had a mindset that wanted to do what they were comfortable with and they had their pattern, they tend to adjust and continue more as a group if you've allowed them to slowly build and hear each other's input along the way.
Absolutely. It's all the time we have for now, but we'll continue our conversation with Christopher in the next episode. Remember, be pivotal.